Okay, we will go ahead and get ready. It has been a real joy to meet so many of you over the last few days. We're incredibly excited that you made it. We know of all of our students coming from abroad have faced the most significant hurdles to get here. And here you are. And the university and Midwest has welcomed you with so much snow in your first couple of days. And I hope you are surviving that and you have the right coat and mittens and boots to enjoy it. I hope you got out yesterday and made a snowman with maybe some of your other residence hall classmates, and that you're just finding some joy in the new experience. We're really glad that you're here. This morning, we want to spend some time both welcoming you, giving you a sense of like this transition that you're making, that you're already in the middle of, but also really talk about some of the essentials that you need to understand about your immigration status now that you're here, and give you next steps for what you need to know about that experience. And we're just excited to be here with you. I'll go over a little bit the schedule for the next 2 days so that you have some clarity about that and what you need to do right now in this week about your immigration status, and then just give you some broad information about things to know for the next 6 months, next year, and how you'll continue to interact with the International Student and Scholar Affairs Office. So we're really pleased that you are here, even though all of these photos are from the fall. We know you're having this very specific experience here in the winter. All of the restrictions that are in place and the gathering guidelines, all of those are really essential. And so if you have not reviewed those or talked about those, make sure that you understand them and make sure that you ask questions. There's going to be a lot of new experiences, and there are so many people here who are ready to help, whether that's students who started in fall of 2020, upperclassmen, your international ambassador, who you'll meet this afternoon, your rector, your residence assistant, your professors, classmates. Ask questions. You're going to feel so much more comfortable if you just say, I don't actually know what I'm supposed to be doing right now. I don't know where I'm supposed to be. Can you help me? Where do I go? Where is this building? And every person that you meet is going to be incredibly welcoming, excited to welcome you to campus, probably say, go Irish, and really excited just to have you here. So know that asking questions is going to get you connected to more people. It's going to help you feel more comfortable much more quickly. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the exact transition that you'll be making because you've already been interacting with so many offices at the university, and you may not have even realized that all of these offices are across campus from each other, and you're asking for different things from every office. And so until you arrive on campus, you're connecting with first year advising, you're connecting with residential life, you are connecting with the admissions office. Maybe you had to talk with them about deferring to this semester, or you had to talk with them about the Explorers program, or talk about your options if you couldn't get to campus. You've talked with our office every time there's been a change in the dates, or you've had questions about your status and your immigration status, or how to get here to the US. You've interacted with the ISSA office. And then for many of the last couple of weeks, the Welcome Week team has been sending emails and to let you know about all these different resources on campus. So every couple of days, you've received an email from Welcome Week about rec sports, about the university health services, about residential life, about student activities, all of these things. So those were the 5 main offices that you were working with before you got to campus. And so some of those offices will stay the same for the next 5 months of the spring semester, and some will shift slightly. So first year advising, you are still going to be very connected to your academic advisor. And they're going to be able to answer all of your questions about your plans for your class. They're going to help you figure out how to connect with your professors or ask questions. There's going to be teaching assistants that may be running some of your classes that you'll be talking with. And so all of those components, you're going to be sort of expanding your engagement with the first year advising office. For residential life, you might have had an email from your rector, had some contact, but now that you're in the hall, you're going to be connecting far more with your rector, assistant rector, and RA, and asking them questions. There may be an international senior hall fellow in your hall. You'll be interacting with them and asking them questions. But that's going to shift a little bit from sort of being in home under the dome, setting up your pre-matriculation testing, doing all of that. It's going to shift to the people in front of you who can help you navigate life in the residence hall. You will not be connecting with admissions anymore. You're probably going to shift to thinking more about, okay, I'm here. How do I think about getting to where I want to go after graduation, and really connecting with the Career Development Office? They have an International Student Advisory Board that's going to start emailing you this week or next to welcome you and let you know about lots of opportunities to start preparing for after graduation, even though that probably feels so far away. There's an office that they will connect you to alum here from Notre Dame if you have some experiences you want to explore over the summer, and then their handshake program where you can look for internship opportunities. So you're probably going to shift from thinking about getting to campus now to what comes after my experience at Notre Dame. And most students find that their best experience is when they're thinking about that from day one. And they feel the most prepared, and they're practicing, and they're reaching out. So career development is going to be an office that you begin to engage with more now that you're on campus. Our office is going to shift a little bit. We had a lot of engagement with you before you arrived. We've talked about like the challenges of getting here, the documents that you have to manage. We will still be communicating with you every couple of weeks, reminding you of your responsibilities, giving you a heads up on things that we think are really essential for you to know as an F1 or J1 visa holder. But this is going to shift a little bit, and we'll talk about that today in a few minutes. The international ambassadors have been reaching out to you, and they are from our office. They'll continue to connect and check in. You should feel free to reach out to them and say, I have more questions, or can we grab coffee? That is an option for you. You will mostly engage with our office around your immigration status, but that will intersect more areas of your life than you realize. And you'll particularly want to engage our office around any work authorization. And we'll talk about that more in a few minutes. The other shift that you'll make is that you've had all this engagement with Welcome Week. You got to meet the Welcome Week ambassadors. If you checked in the last 5 days, you got your t-shirt, you got your bags full of all sorts of resources. You got your mask, your thermometer, all of that came from the Welcome Week team. And now you'll shift to some other offices within student affairs. You're going to hear more from student activities and clubs and engagement there. You will probably be looking for clubs to join and connect with people. Maybe you already did if you were part of India Explorers or Study Away locally. That's going to shift now from welcome to I'm here, I'm in the community, I'm a member of the Notre Dame family and ready to get connected. The other area that you'll be connected is around health and wellness, and that could be the University Counseling Center, it could be University Health Services, it could be the McWell Student for Wellbeing programming. So those shifts are going to start to happen. You're still going to be engaging all of these different offices. And I think what's really extraordinary is the number of resources that are here on campus that will help you succeed, help you engage. If you are feeling lost, uncertain, if you're just so excited and you want to keep adding opportunities, then you have all of these offices, all of these partners on campus that will help you do that most effectively. So today, most of you should have already connected with your international ambassadors over Zoom or a phone call, FaceTime, but today you'll get to meet them in person. And we will be meeting outside of the main building anytime between 10:30 and 11 this morning. When we're done here, we're going to invite you just to begin to move across campus, put on your coat, put on your boots, your gloves, and come and connect with our international ambassadors who have had the same experience you had, except they arrived in the fall. But they had the experience of their first winter. They've had the experience of coming back to campus in January, even this year, and just finding a completely different environment because of the snow and the cold and having to reacclimate to that. And coming back and figuring out how are they going to be involved this spring. And so we're looking forward to your time with them today. So things to know about today. So we will have this conversation about maintaining your status. some essential pieces of information. So all of those offices that you're engaging, that is the same experience as every other first-year student at the university, except for your engagement with our office and the questions that you need to consider now that you're here in F1 or J1 status. And this is true whether you are here only for a semester or you're here for the next 4 years. At 11 a.m., we expect all students to be outside of the main building to connect with their international ambassadors. We'll probably finish early, so you'll have time to come over. This afternoon, after you've connected with your international ambassador, had lunch with some other students, had a chance to have a conversation, ask questions, talk about your schedule, talk about maybe the best plan for how to get to all of your classes, or what you might need for your residence hall, what's missing. We will have a resource fair this afternoon. The first half hour, 45 minutes, there will be a number of banks and some phone companies where you will be able to meet with them virtually, jump into a room, ask a few questions. You don't have to make any decisions today, but it might help you just talk with a few different representatives and get a sense of what they have to offer before you make a decision. At 1:30, our partners from University Health Services will be on to give a presentation about U.S. health insurance and U.S. healthcare. And that might seem like a lot of information right now. We will try and record it. If we can't, we'll offer that session again in a few weeks. But it is a very different system coming into university healthcare. And so you might have some questions and the team there will go over that. Around 2 o'clock, we'll have a representative from the Multicultural Student Programs and Services Office. And that office oversees all of the cultural clubs. And so this would be a good opportunity to hear about, are there cultural clubs that you could get connected with right away and meet more students from your region of the world and begin to have that community. In some cases, if you don't have dinner plans tonight, you can also choose to grab dinner with the IA and some other students, and that will be really on your own schedule. For our purposes today, you are done at about 2:30. Welcome Week team has other programming for you to involve yourself with after 2:30, and so you want to connect with them about that. For tomorrow, you are going to have much more Welcome Week programming and lots of exciting opportunities, many of them mandatory. It's a mix of virtual and in-person. And so you're going to want to go to the welcomeweekend.nd.edu website if you've lost the email from that team and review that. But they've got a lot of opportunities. Some of them overlap with the events that I have right in front of us right now. So F1 and J1 registration is mandatory for all F1 and J1 students. And that's when we actually report to the government that you've arrived, you've reported your address, and that we're confirming that you're enrolled for the spring 2021 semester. It is absolutely essential. But we know that this time period actually overlaps with the some of the programming from Welcome Week. So if you do not get an appointment tomorrow, we also have appointments on Wednesday and Thursday. And we will put the link in the chat for where to make an appointment before we finish today. You absolutely need to make that appointment. You want to be registered this week because that sets some other timelines in motion. You'll have a 10-minute appointment one-on-one with an immigration advisor, and we'll register you, and then we'll answer any questions that you have about your status or about travel or anything coming up, opportunities. Tomorrow afternoon, we have both a Social Security number presentation, which is just a 15-minute presentation. Because that overlaps with some of the programming with Welcome Week, I will talk a little bit about Social Security numbers today and just give you a heads up, and then we will record tomorrow's session. You can view it later if you need to. Soon after that, we'll have a driving in the US presentation and how do you get a driver's license in the US. And same thing, that overlaps with some of the programming you may be attending tomorrow. And we will record that and send out the link afterwards if you are not able to attend. Tomorrow afternoon, we are offering a shuttle for first-year students only to go and pick up any more essentials that you need. If you came with your family, you might have already gone to the store and gotten lots of blankets. Maybe you find you just need one more. It's chilly and you want one more blanket. Maybe you need another lamp. Maybe you just need another jacket or sweater, more socks, or you just want to grab some snacks and some drinks to have in your residence hall. Any number of things we will be arranging a shuttle to Target, which will have all of the things you could possibly need. It's a very popular spot for students to go and pick up their essentials. And so that will be running tomorrow afternoon from 2:30 to 6:30. But you do need to RSVP for one of the departure times from campus. And that could be 2:30, 3:30, or 4:30. Unfortunately, if your family is still with you, they cannot get on the bus. It's for students only. You do need to show your daily pass, your green pass, and you'll need to show us the confirmation that you have tested negative and you've moved into your residence hall, and that you are approved to go by the health services. So that's what's coming up tomorrow. Once that shuttle is done, you come back. Welcome Week is going to continue to have activities for you to prepare you to start the spring 2021 semester. Okay, so we're going to shift a little bit into really thinking specifically about how you'll engage the International Student and Scholar Affairs Office, and what do you need to know about maintaining your status. I will be very honest, it's not super exciting, jazzy, oh my gosh, you're part of the Notre Dame family message, but it's really essential to your success at the university, and making sure that you can access all of the opportunities that the Notre Dame experience promises you, and making sure that your status does not get in the way of that. And any status violations don't keep you from getting to move forward. So we want to just cover this briefly. Throughout your time at the university, we will send reminders, and we're really careful not to send emails that don't include essential status information. You are going to get hundreds of emails from your professors, from your clubs that you're joining, from all of the different resources on campus. And the resources that are coming from our office are just often, hey, it's that time of year where we want you to check your documents. Hey, it's that time of year you might be thinking about work authorization, and here's what you need to remember about your status and employment in the US. And hey, we're getting ready to go home for the break. Do you have the travel signature that you may need to get back in the US? And so those pieces are the things we'll be emailing you about. Occasionally, we'll include messages about other very specific international friendly announcements. But in this case, we need you to read the emails we're sending, especially when they're about your status and maintaining your F1 or J1 status. Most of you joined us for the pre-arrival session where we talked very specifically about the documents that establish your status, that determine your status. And that includes the Form I-20 or DS 2019. If you have an F1 visa, you will only have the Form I-20. If you have a J1 visa, which is only our exchange students, you'll have a DS 2019. Those are the documents that establish what you're doing here in the US and how long you expect to be here doing it. And that's studying, right? That's the primary purpose of your time in the US. All of you should have already looked up your I-94 record online, and you should do this every time you enter the US. And if there's anything that is unusual about it, it doesn't say F1 status, it doesn't have your most recent arrival, then you can reach out to our office and we'll help you fix that and address that. But that admission record is helping establish your status. We want to make sure that's correct. The visa stamp in your passport, if you have that, that's going to be establishing your status. And you want to make sure that that's valid every time you exit, because you're going to need a new one to re-enter, or that you have plans to apply for a new visa. And then your SEVIS record, which we talked about. And the SEVIS record is the record that our office is managing on your behalf, and we're reporting to the US government every semester and every time there's a change to your program. Our office is reporting. It is still your responsibility to report those changes. So if your major changes, you want to make sure that your major matches the one printed on your I-20, that's going to be updated in your SEVIS record. If your address changes, it's going to be updated in your SEVIS record. If there's any information, your program dates change because you've been delayed in getting to campus, it's going to be your responsibility to reach out to us and ensure that that document matches your experience here at the university. We talked a little bit, and we'll talk more today, about if you do not effectively maintain your status, or if you violate your status, or you lose that status, it's going to impact your ability to work. It's going to impact your ability to remain in the US, and it may be really difficult to return in the future in any status, a B status, H-1B, to come back and work in the US, maybe apply for permanent residency. If you make decisions or fail to reach out to our office, while you're an F1 student or J1 student, and we have to take an action on your record, your SEVIS record, that could impact you in the future. And we really don't want that to happen. And so it's always better to reach out, ask questions, than to think, I've got it, I'm fine. That whole list of departments and offices that you will engage while you're a student at the university, our office is that extra link for you because of your status. Decisions you make with those first groups of offices, you want to come back and reach out to us and ask, should I be concerned or aware of anything with my F1 status? One of the things that will be slightly different for international students with an F1 or J1 visa is just travel. Again, we talked about this at the pre-arrival session, but if you're traveling in the US, make sure that you have your passport and your Form I-20, at a minimum, a copy of those things, even if you go into Chicago for the day. Because again, the CBP has the right to ask you within 100 miles of a port of entry information about your status. It's just easier to have something with you that confirms it, and you can move on from that encounter if it should happen. And you are an F1 J1 status from now until your entire entry this time in the US, and we recommend you enter an F1 or J1 status every single time you are traveling in or out. And every time you travel outside the US and are looking to re-enter, you're still going to need your passport. You're going to need that valid I-20 and F1 visa, and you'll need a travel signature. They're good for 1 year from the date of signature. And it's important to remember that every time you exit the US, when you are approaching the port of entry again and you're wanting to come back into the US, the CBP, the Customs and Border Protection officers, have the power and authority to determine whether you are eligible to enter. And that encounter is between you as the applicant and the US government. And there is not a lot that we can do in that moment, except for make sure that your SEVIS record is updated because you have communicated to us what you need. But ultimately, you want to remember every time you exit the US, there's a slight risk involved in that decision. Do students come in and out of the US every day, thousands and thousands, with no problem? Yes. But ultimately, that CBP officer has a lot of authority over granting you permission to enter the US. And you want to be aware of that when you're traveling, when you make those travel decisions, and that you want to make sure you have everything that you need to make the right decision. So maintaining those documents, we talked about it. Part of maintaining your status is making sure your documents are up to date and any changes you've reported to our office so that you can get an updated I-20. It's also important as we enter the spring semester that you remember during every spring and fall semester, you must be in 12 credits. This is a requirement for your status. It isn't just the university requirement. It's your requirement because of your status that the US government has put in place for undergraduate students. In a typical semester, only one class is allowed to be online of those 12 credits. So no more than 3 credits in a typical semester can be online. Because of the pandemic, the Student and Exchange Visitor Program, the US government agency that oversees your SEVIS record, has given permission for students to be enrolled in more than one online class. We would still encourage you to have as few online classes on your schedule as possible. If your class is coded as in person and your professor is meeting online or virtually, that's fine. That doesn't count as an online class per immigration regulations. It's those classes that you're enrolled in that are coded as online only. And then it's important to remember that every semester you will complete roll call. And roll call is you confirming that one, you've enrolled in the semester, you plan to attend classes, and it gives you an opportunity to update your address in the system. And so it's important that you complete that every semester within the timeline. This year, roll call has to be finished by February 10th. So for purposes of your class enrollment, the roll call period is when you can drop and add classes without any consequence. If you are a first-year student, though, you need to be working with your academic advisor if you're going to drop or add or change classes. That's really important to remember. Next semester, when you're entering your sophomore year, it's a little bit different. It's your responsibility to do that drop add. But again, it needs to be done by February 10th. not just for class enrollment, but also for your immigration status to make sure that we can report your enrollment and attendance to the US government. So for maintaining status, it's also really important that you update your address. Most of you have your residence hall room. You're going to be assigned there. It's not going to change for the next 5 months. When you return in the fall, you will fill out roll call that will report your new address to the university system, which will come to our system. We'll tell the US government, this is where this student is living now. If your address changes at all during this semester, if you decide to stay in the US over the summer and you move to another location because your residence hall closes for the summer, you need to report that change of address. It's really essential. Last spring, when we closed for the pandemic, students had to report their address if they moved into a temporary apartment when it seemed like we might reopen. Then they had to report their address again when they moved over the rest of the spring. Many students moved into the Morris Inn. They had to report that change of address. And then over the summer, students moved again. They had to report that change of address. That is an immigration status requirement in order to maintain your status. It isn't something that the university is going to necessarily ask you for their records, but our office needs it to update your US government immigration record. So you'll usually do that through roll call, but if you stay during the summer, if you move during the semester and your address changes, you do need to report that. It's an essential part of your status. So we're going to talk a little bit about employment, two different kinds of employment that you may need authorization for. One is on-campus employment. If you have an F1 visa, if you are here studying at the university with an I-20, then you can work anywhere on campus. And that could be you work in the library, you do some research for a professor, you work in the office of your department, maybe you go and work at Starbucks for a semester. You're like, I just want to hang out in a coffee shop for a little bit and learn what this is all about. All of those opportunities on campus are allowed. You do not need authorization from our office. There are a couple of on-campus exceptions, like the bookstore and the newspaper, that you may need authorization for, so you could check in with us. During this semester, you can only work up to 20 hours a week when classes are in session. If you work more than 20 hours, then you violated your status, and that 20 hours starts on Saturday and goes through Friday. So less than 20 hours in 1 week period, you can work on campus. During the fall break, which we really don't have this year, but we will next, spring break, during the summer break, the winter break, you can work on campus as much as you want. There's no limitation. But when classes are in session, you are limited to 20 hours. For our J1 students, this is not true for you. If you want to work on campus, whether it's the library, research, if you are getting a grant or a stipend from the university, if you want to work at Starbucks or at any dining hall experience, you cannot begin working until you have authorization from our office. And that will come via email in written form. You are authorized to work. If you do not have that and you begin working on campus and it is reported to our office, then we do have to terminate your record and you would have to leave campus and leave the US and go home. And so it's really, the consequences are severe if you work without authorization. So if you're here with the J1 visa, then you need to have that prior authorization. And F1 students, the word prior is going to become really important for you too on the next slide. J1 students are also limited to 20 hours a week. So if you're working on campus, F1 students, you don't need authorization from our office in most cases, but you should not work more than 20 hours. And this includes multiple jobs. If you're working 3 hours at one job at Starbucks, 3 hours with a professor doing research, 3 hours someplace else, then you just need to make sure that the total number of hours does not exceed 20. It doesn't matter how many employers that you have or how many different offices you're working for. So off-campus employment is a difficult conversation because there are so many opportunities that you are going to find that you want to take advantage of that are off-campus that you may not be eligible to take advantage of. And this is particularly true when you start to think about internships over the summer. So none of the students on this call today are eligible to begin working off campus in the US until next January. You have to have 1 year of enrollment on your SEVIS record and your SEVIS ID to be eligible to work off campus. And this includes remote work. It includes remote work, even if that your employer is actually back in your home country. It includes remote work, even if it's for a US company. It includes work that you are not being paid for, because the US government is much less interested in whether you're being paid for the services you're providing. And they're more interested in, are you providing services to an organization that maybe someone else would be paid for? And it goes beyond just a shadowing kind of experience. So if you are going to be looking for an opportunity to get an internship this summer, it cannot be in the US. No student on the call right now will be eligible for that this summer, 2021. All of the students on this call who are going to be degree seeking and returning in the fall, returning in spring 2022, you will be eligible to apply for an internship in the summer of 2022. One question that has come up is, I really have this opportunity. I've already been doing something back home over the winter break, and now I'm here. Can I continue doing that? I'm in the US, but everything's back home. My paychecks go to a bank back home. The work I'm doing is for an organization that does not have a US office. And unfortunately, the US immigration regulations have not caught up to remote work and the sort of technological advances that allow us to work remotely from such a distance. When you are present in the US, you are subject to US immigration regulations related to your F1 status. And so you cannot work off campus without authorization. We often have students who will reach out to us and say, I started a job a week ago, or I started working a month ago, and I just realized maybe I need authorization. And unfortunately, in those situations, once you have begun working and you did not have permission or authorization from our office, then you have violated your status, and we are required to terminate your F1 or J1 SEVIS record. And there's some really significant consequences, mostly that you have to exit the US. And you'll have to apply for a new visa, potentially, and you'll have to get a new SEVIS ID number, and you'll have to pay all of the fees associated with that. And so the consequences of working without authorization in advance of beginning the work are really severe for both F1 and J1 students. So the kinds of authorization that F1 students get for off-campus work include curricular practical training, which is for when you are an enrolled student and you haven't graduated yet. CPT is going to be connected to a class, an internship class that you take. It's going to be related to a summer internship. It's going to be related to a spring or fall internship. Any work that is happening that is not connected to the campus and serving students on campus and isn't paid by the University of Notre Dame is considered off-campus work. And again, even if you're not paid, you should always check in with us if you want to take advantage of an opportunity. So CPT is going to be that authorization, has to be tied to a class, has to be an essential part of your major and your program of study. All work as an F1 student and a J1 student that happens off campus must be connected to your major. So you might have a really great internship opportunity come up and you're like, it's not my major, but it's something I want to do in the future. This could be such a great opportunity to help me get into law school or get into med school or do whatever it is you want to do after graduation. But if it isn't specifically tied to your current major on your SEVIS record and on your Form I-20, you are not eligible to take advantage of that opportunity. OPT is going to be typically used by most F1 students after you've graduated. You're applying to the US government for post-graduation, post-completion authorization. We assist with that process, but most of you will not apply for that authorization for 3.5, 4 years, and we'll be in contact about what you need to do in those cases. Some of you might use OPT before you graduate because you wanted to participate in an internship and you can't take a class for it. J1 students, most of you are exchange students, so this isn't actually going to be an option for you. But if you have questions about working off campus, you should reach out to Lisa Schroyer or to the ISSA office to ask more questions. Again, J1 students any capacity unless you have written authorization from the ISSA office. So other times you might reach out to our office, or you want to just consider, is this going to impact my immigration status, and should I ask more questions right now? It could be that you have health problems, and especially within the pandemic, this has been a reality that your health or concerns about health are going to impact your ability to finish your degree on time. You should reach out to our office as you're talking to your academic advisor, as you're talking to University Health Services. This is a chance where you're going to say, okay, I actually, as an F1 or J1 student, have an additional office that I need to access. I have more questions I need to ask, and you should reach out to us and say, is there something I need to consider related to my status because I'm sick, I need to go home, I have an emergency, I have this opportunity that I want to take advantage of. I am in academic trouble. I'm really struggling with my classes. I'm concerned that I'm going to get dismissed from the university. Is this going to impact my status? If you take a leave of absence, you're going to reach out to our office. That's going to have an impact on your status, and we want to talk through that with you. If you graduate early, right now, most of you are set to graduate in May 2024 based on your Form I-20. If you graduate early because you've just really committed to taking summer courses and really overloading every semester of your schedule, you need to reach out to us. That's going to have an impact on your immigration status. Many of you may have taken deferred last fall, taken the leave last fall, and so you might actually need an extra semester at the end of your program to complete your degree requirements. That's a case you're going to want to reach out to our office and say, what do I need to do to make sure that I'm in status and I can complete my degree at the University of Notre Dame? And then anytime an off-campus opportunity comes up or a remote work opportunity comes up, you should reach out to our office and say, I have a couple of questions. I want to take advantage of this opportunity. I've been talking to career development. They told me about this wonderful series of internships I can apply for. How will it impact my status? Am I eligible to apply for these because of my F1 status? These are essential questions that could impact you for years and years into the future. And so it's always important. Office, we could respond quickly and say, nope, nothing that you need to do here. That doesn't mean it's the same for the next opportunity. And so you want to make sure that you check in as each of these opportunities come up. Just because you got a yes or a no the first time you asked doesn't mean that's going to be the same answer every single time. And we want you to be in contact with our office, particularly around employment, particularly around enrollment questions, particularly around graduation decisions. You want to make sure that you're looping us in and you're asking questions. And that could be that you write us and say, I actually don't know what question to ask, but I think this might impact my immigration status. So we always want to remind students that we are very much here to help you and to support you. Your F1 or J1 status is your status to manage. And this is why we recently sent out a reminder that said, hey, remember F1 students, read page 3 of your Form I-20. Hey, J1 students, read page 2 of your Form DS 2019. Because when you signed those documents to go to the visa office and then to cross at the port of entry, you basically wrote and said, I read everything about my status. I read this whole I-20. I understand what I'm signing. And if you, for some reason, violate your status in the future, there's not going to be a lot of grace. Ignorance is not an excuse for not knowing, for violating your status. The US government was going to say you signed and said you understood. Hopefully you actually read the documents you signed. We're really here to help you. We do not work for the government. We work for the University of Notre Dame. We work in service of your time here at the university and to support you at the university, but it is your status. And so you want to be the one driving with the questions and making sure that you're reaching out to us. We manage about 2,000 students across the university, both enrolled students, admitted students, graduated students. We have a long time to communicate and be connected to you. We want you, though, to focus on your studies and to build community and to get integrated into the life of the community here at Notre Dame and experience all the advantages and benefits and joys of that. And so that's why we email you, we'll remind you, this is what you need to consider with your status. We try and cover these essentials at the beginning of your time. And you have 1,000 things that you're learning right now. So just know we're going to keep reminding you, keep us in mind as opportunities come up, as you're making decisions. Shoot us an email at the issa@indy.edu email, and we'll help you support you in all of these opportunities, because it is your responsibility to manage your status, but we really want to make sure that you're successful in doing that. The other thing I would note is that in the last year, there have been a lot of changes to immigration regulations, or there have been lots of suggestions for how to change immigration regulations. When those happen, when those changes happen, we do message students and we'll say, hey, you need to know about this and how it's going to impact your status, or you may have heard news about this, it's not going to impact you. You can disregard that news flash. If you see something in the news or on a listserv or in a group chat and you're like, oh my gosh, this sounds terrible, or this sounds amazing, always reach out to our office and ask more questions. If it has to do with your immigration status, with work in the US for international students, or for your experience here. The other thing I would just remind you of is that while there are many extraordinarily kind and useful, helpful people across campus, it's really essential that you understand it is only our office that can help answer questions about your immigration status. And that includes the rules, the responsibilities, the benefits. If you ask someone, do I need to do anything? Because I'm an international student or F1, and they are not connected to the ISSA office. They don't have a DSO, PDSO, ARO designation with the US government. Then you need to pivot back to our office, send us an email, and say, do I need to be asking more questions about this as an F1 or J1 student? Really kind people on campus, but come back to our office for those questions about immigration. So I want to talk a little bit about resources and a few other parts about living in the US, things that will be essential in our last 10 minutes together. The first is that as you're accessing your office, that could be through advising appointments. Right now, those are all virtual. And so we have a whole list of appointments on our website that you can just reach out to, do a 10 or 15-minute conversation with us if you have questions. That's how you're going to sign up for your registration appointments. ISSALink, I'll show a slide for that, is the way that you report and request, make requests related to your status. We have various information sessions, tomorrow's social security number session and driving. In a few weeks, we'll probably have something on cultural adjustment. And the ISSA updates is the email that we send out to students to give you information about your status, reminders about your status, questions that we're getting from students just to answer more broadly. So this is just a visual of the ISSALink system. This is where you would request a new I-20 if you've lost yours in traveling, or you need a new travel signature, you would go here. Many of you are going to need to get a social security number. And so you're going to actually fill out the social security number letter request. And I'll talk about that process in a moment. Many of you will study abroad in your junior year. And if you decide to do that, you're actually going to need to report that to our office. So the university knows you're studying abroad. Your residence hall knows you're studying abroad. The study abroad team knows you are, your academic advisor. But as an F1 student, you also have to come in and tell us, because we have to update your SEVIS record to show that you're doing research or study abroad. And so again, it's that another example of you have one more step to manage as an international student. We send out reminders about this, but ultimately it is your responsibility to report those changes related to your status. If you get an updated passport while you're here, you can also report that to us. And if you have a change of status while you're here, you would report that here. This is a couple of different ways that you can find out more information from us. The ISSA updates email will go out. We post a lot of different events on our website. In the fall, we'll have a class called Football 101 before the first football game. So you can get a sense of the rules and just understand, when do you stand up, when do you sit down, when do you cheer, when do you boo? What does it mean when students are throwing each other up in the air and doing push-ups with students? All of those things we'll cover at a Football 101. Even though you've been here this whole spring, once football season gets here, things are going to shift a little bit, and we just want to prepare you with the basics. We'll have conversations about identity and culture. There's a program called the U-Curve, Finding a Fit in a New Culture, that we may offer virtually this spring, but typically we offer those sessions in the fall. And so this is, I'll just stop on that cultural adjustment question, or this finding the right fit. You're here, you've had all this anticipation to get here and excitement, and you arrive, there's snow on the ground. It is so much colder than you ever could have imagined. And so you probably experienced a little bit of a shock, like, oh my gosh, what have I done? And you're going to have those experiences again and again as you begin to explore and adjust. And even students who have spent a lot of their life traveling to the US as a tourist, or have visited family here, or have lots of experiences coming through the port of entry, it is a very different experience to live in another culture. And the US has its own culture that will be distinct from your home country culture. The Midwest, here in South Bend, in Indiana, in Chicago, Michigan, it has a very particular culture that's different. So if you've only ever visited New York City or Miami or LA or Houston, and now you are in the Midwest, there's going to be another cultural adjustment. And there's going to be a cultural adjustment because you've started university, and university culture and Notre Dame culture in particular are very distinct. And so you're going to have these moments of like absolute joy. I'm so excited. I love this. And you're going to have other moments where you're like, what am I doing here? Why am I so lonely? Why am I not connecting? Why does everyone else seem like they're connected? And that's just going to keep bouncing for you. And it's going to even out over the course of the semester. But we tell you this because the best way to address that cultural adjustment process and get yourself to that sort of even run of satisfaction, feeling like you're home, feeling like you belong, is to recognize that you're going to have this particular journey. And it could be that you're super extroverted. It could be that you're very introverted. And everyone has a version of this because there's a lot of change and a lot of newness and transition that you're going to be going through. So having clear expectations and having some sense of expecting it, that it is going to come and it's fine and it's normal, is a really healthy part of that process. And so we note this. We'll have conversations. The University Counseling Center has a whole student support group, a student engagement group, where you can just talk to other international students and say, I don't understand why people here in the Midwest do things like this, or why do they always talk about the weather in the Midwest? Why is there so much small talk? Why is there so much food at the dining hall? All of these are questions that every student has asked before you, and it can be jarring, and then you find your way to this equilibrium. So our office helps connect you to those resources and reminds you about, okay, you're going to have this immigration status that you are managing, and you're going to have this cultural experience. Let's connect you with resources. A couple of notes that we will remind you again via email frequently while you're here. One is that every student who was present in the previous year, so every student who was here last fall of 2020 is going to have to file a tax document in spring of 2021. All of you on this call are present in the US right now for the 2021 year. So next spring, you will have to file a tax document, a US tax document. Whether you have a job or not, whether you work or not, every international student in F1 or J1 status needs to file a tax document. So look for that. We have some resources on campus that will help you do that for free. And we have some great resources either online or in person that you can access to help you think through that process. If you were not present in 2020 in the US in F1 status, you don't need to file a tax document. This is something to look forward to in the spring of 2022 for most of you. We always want to remind students at the beginning that there is a whole system of scammers that get your information. We have no idea how. They will call you, they'll email you, and they will often threaten your status. They will threaten you and tell you that you violated your status and that you owe money to the government and that you must pay immediately or you will be arrested. We have students every semester who get these calls, and they're incredibly scary. The people on the other side of the call are professionals. They know exactly how to sound official. They know what documents to show you if you're FaceTiming them. They know exactly how to get money from students and from folks who are just vulnerable and nervous about maybe their situation. Every year we have at least one student who loses money, and that could be $1,000, it could be $8,000. It has on occasion been more than that. And often when someone is a victim of a scam, they don't realize it until they've already paid the money. And then they're out of the moment of panic and they think, I'm safe. I paid it. My status is not going to be impacted. My family isn't going to find out. I'm safe. My family's safe. Everything's fine. And that's the moment that their brains tend to shift and they think, wait a second. I remember hearing at orientation something about not paying people over the phone. And I think I've just been the victim of a scam. And then they call our office. And at that point, there's no way to get that money back. And so we just want to encourage you. If someone calls you and they threaten your status, or they have a lot of information about you that you think, man, there's no way that someone would have this information about me or my family if this wasn't legitimate, you can always end the call or tell them you need to speak to the ISSA office first, and then let us know. And we will 100% of the time tell you, no, that sounds like a scam. They are able to get your personal information from anywhere, but it can be a really expensive experience if you fall victim to it. So FBI, IRS, Social Security office, the consulate, the US Embassy, your home consulate, none of these government agencies, the South Bend Police, the Mishawaka Police, the Notre Dame Police, no government agency is going to call you and threaten you and demand payment over the phone. It is not how any of those agencies operate. The CBP, if they stop you and ask you for your ID and like your status, it's going to be in person. They're going to have documents to prove that they're actually who they say they are. They are never going to call you on the phone to tell you that something's wrong with your status. So please be really careful as you're engaging in those situations to simply hang up, say, I've got to talk to somebody about this, and get off the phone. Every student thinks I would never fall for that. I would never, I'm too smart, would never fall for this. And it's you against some professionals. And so we just want to give you encouragement, hang up the phone. Don't need to engage there. So we do want to talk just a little bit about Social Security numbers. The first is it's really an ID number, a 9-digit number used by the Social Security Administration, used by the US government, and it's typically connected to wages that you're reporting to the US government so that they can make sure they're taxing you appropriately. That's what the Social Security number is. You are only eligible, and I can see I didn't finish the sentence, only eligible if you're being paid by a US institution. This could be a scholarship, it could be a fellowship, or you have a job that starts in the next 30 days. That's the only time that you're eligible to apply for a Social Security number. Even though it's really this 9-digit number that helps the US government track your wages and tax you correctly, generally it's requested by banks to set up a bank account. Phone companies often ask for it because they want to run a credit check on you. A loan company might want it. If you move off campus your senior year, you may need it to run a credit check for an apartment lease. And so there's lots of ways that it's very useful. The Bureau of Motor Vehicles, the BMV, is going to ask for it so that you can get a driver's license or a state ID. And so in all of these cases, you may not have a Social Security number because you're not going to work your first semester. You don't want to get a job. You want to focus on studying. You're here. You want to connect with people. You don't want to work. And that's totally fine. You can apply for a letter of ineligibility that allows you to apply for a driver's license and helps with the bank process. Most banks will still help you set up an account without the Social Security number. They may ask for it, and then you just have to say, I don't have it. I just got here, and that's fine. An apartment lease, they may have another way that they're going to ask you for ID. But all of these different agencies will ask for it, but it's technically something related to your employment and wages and taxes. If you do have a scholarship at the university, you are going to be paid by the university, or you do plan on starting a job in the next couple of weeks, you really want to work on campus, have some extra cash, or you just want to get some research experience, you found a paid research opportunity on campus. You have to wait 2 weeks after you complete the F1 registration process, and then you have to be within 30 days of your employment start date. You're going to need a letter from your employer. You're going to need a letter from our office. I showed you where that was on ISSALink. You're going to need to fill out the Social Security number application, and you're going to need to have all of your documents, the passport, visa, your I-94 record printed off after you've Googled it, and a copy of your Form I-20. And typically you would take all of those documents, you would go down to the Social Security Administration office, you would submit them, and then they would email you, or they would mail you, excuse me, your Social Security card. Because of COVID, they've had different precautions in place across the different months as the pandemic has changed. And currently, they were requiring students to fax in copies of all of those documents I just listed, and then call them 3 days later, 3 to 5 days later, and then set an appointment then to actually go down to the office in downtown South Bend. So COVID precautions may continue to change that. But then if you really just need a letter of ineligibility because you want to get a driver's license, you want to do that differently, then you can also do the same exact process, and they're going to say, you're not eligible, but here's your letter saying that you're not eligible. So Social Security number, we'll do a quick, slightly longer session tomorrow. We'll record that. We'll send you the link. But in most cases, unless you're being paid by the university because of a scholarship or grant, or you're planning on starting a job on campus this spring, you will not be eligible for a Social Security number. And if you are going to do one of those things or you are eligible, you'll need to wait 2 weeks before starting that process. And all of that information is on our website. In our last minute, just want to remind you, tomorrow you're going to have F1 registration links. I'm going to ask one of Cynthia or Allie, if one of you guys could put the appointment link in the chat right now, that would be really helpful to all students. But you can go to issa.indy.edu, and under the contact page, there is an advising appointment link that you can fill out. And it looks like it was just put in. So you should click on that link, and you're going to find an F1J1 new student registration appointment tomorrow, Wednesday, or Thursday. So you may need to look at your class schedule. I do know, and thank you, Yanrong, who let us know that there's some overlap with a required session tomorrow with Welcome Week, but there are some available appointments between 11:30 and 12. It's 10 minutes. You're going to need your passport and your I-20 with you, and you are going to complete the F1 registration process. So go ahead and follow that link. Tomorrow, you also want to sign up for the shuttle, and that was in the email that we sent out on Saturday. We will send out that email link again today. So if you want to RSVP for a shuttle time, especially after talking with your IA at the 11 o'clock meeting, then you can connect with them, find out what are some other things you think I might need. Or if you just want to go to Target, you don't actually need to buy anything, you just want to see what's available. That's also a very good strategy. You'll have an hour or so to just wander around the store, get what you need. The bus will bring you back. There's going to be tons of storage so that you can get as much as you want or as little as you want. You will have to, again, have that green pass and your confirmation that you have not, that you've tested positive once arriving on campus. We are going to check for both of those things at 11 o'clock today when you show up to meet with the international ambassadors, and we'll check them again before you get on the shuttle tomorrow. So do make sure to sign up for the calendar. The last thing is that we are going to see you in about a half an hour at the main building, at the Golden Dome, outside the building by the main steps. So when you come up to the main building on the main quad, the Basilica will be on your left, Washington Hall will be, and La Fortune will be on your right, and you'll be facing the main building stairs. And the students that will meet you will remind you not to step on the stairs. There's lots of superstition around that. So we are simply meeting by the front stairs. This is for students only. And once you get there, make sure you've got your coat on, make sure you've got your mittens, all of that. Your IA will take you inside the main building. You'll have a time to gather, meet other students in person across a couple of IA groups. They'll take you across campus for maybe a mini tour, just to show you a couple of the essential buildings and keep repeating where you might need to go, where you need to be, and then you'll all go to lunch. At 1 o'clock today will be the resource fair. Right when we're done here, we're going to email you the link for that. And again, that'll be a chance to talk with University Health Services about any questions, listen to their presentation, talk with some banks, and see what options you want, what you need to set up an account, and how you can do that. Talk to a few phone companies, and we'll go from there. We are incredibly thrilled that you are here. We look forward to connecting with you in the next couple of weeks and even seeing you outside in a few minutes, and hope that your first semester at the university is wonderful. I do want you guys to have time to come over to the main building and get bundled up for the cold. But if you do have any questions, we will take just a few minutes here. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask any question that you might have here in this moment.
Okay, so I have a question.
Sure, Gabriel, go ahead.
Yeah, so I already made my appointment for tomorrow.
Perfect.
And apart from doing the process that I have to, almost like the check-in process.
Yeah.
Can I also ask other questions to the person who I'm going to have the appointment? Let's say I want to check about the I-94, or I want to ask about Social Security or everything.
That's an excellent question, and you can ask all of those questions. The registration process takes 2 minutes, but then when you're meeting, you can ask any of those follow-up questions. Absolutely.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Good question. Any other questions?
It's online, right? Like via Zoom.
Yes, it is, Daniela. Yes, it's online, virtual. You'll just check in, and once you've set up the appointment, we'll make sure that you get an email with the Zoom link.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. The only pieces that are in person tomorrow is the shuttle. Everything else is virtual.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, we will see all of you in front of the main building by 11 o'clock, and looking forward to it. Dress warm, and welcome to the University of Notre Dame.